Sometimes things happen that are funny at the expense of our friends. Quite a few years ago, I was working as a wildlife biologist out of Abilene, Texas, working wildlife. Got to be really good friends with Chuck Dowshow, who worked for fisheries. Unfortunately, Chuck passed away a few years ago, but Chuck was one of the dearest friends I've ever had. Back then, I was trapping ducks up at Lake Fort Phantom Hill, and during the wintertime, and I was driving by a certain area where there was a dead cow. Well, I watched this dead cow for several days and saw coyotes and a few other things chewing on it. And one morning, Chuck decided to go out to the lake with me, and he was going to check the fishery side of things. And it was colder than all get out, but we ended up driving by this dead cow and out in the pasture and on a property that I had permission to go on to if we really wanted to. And as we're driving by, it was cold. There was a little bit of snow on the ground, a little bit of ice, and all those kind of things. And as we're driving by, I commented about this dead cow out in the pasture and looked out there, and lo and behold, the sides of this cow were jumping up and down, and we're going, "Oh my gosh, what could that be?" Could it be a coyote or something? So Chuck and I stopped the truck. We walked out into that pasture and walked up close to where that cow was. And most of it was eaten up except for this one hole right about where, on the bottom part where her belly would be. And Chuck walked up to that that dead cow and with his cowboy boots kicked at that. And about the time he kicked at it, guess what? A badger. Now, badger bit into his boot. Thank God it did not bite into his toe, but when that badger bit into that boot, it held on, and Dowshow jumped backwards, screaming and hollering, kicking, and here's this badger on the end of his boot, and it's flipping and flopping back and forth, and he's hollering, "Help me, get me out of here, help me, do this, do that," kind of thing. And unfortunately, at the time, when I realized that he was not screaming out of pain, but out of surprise, I just about fell to the ground laughing. It was so funny to see Chuck bouncing around. Chuck was not, let's just say, he wasn't heavy set, but Chuck was not a lightweight either. So finally, this badger released, and then the race was on. The race being on, that he was chasing me for not helping him get that badger off his foot. But as I said, sometimes things happen at the expense of your friends, and you got to tell about them sooner or later. So I got a feeling there's a few of those kind of stories, maybe not involving a badger, but I got a feeling there's few stories that you might be able to tell, and look forward to catching up with you somewhere down the road and around a campfire, hopefully, and listen to some of your stories. We'll be back next week with another one.